It's war. Not quite the war they were pushing for. That would have been China. Now, Australia has a serious problem here because unlike the US and the UK and many other countries, in Australia, the decision to go to war rests with one man. And that man would be Prime Minister Scott Morrison, a man not noted for his vision and his judgment. You can see by the media coverage this week that mainstream media loves a war. The warmongers at Rupert Murdoch's News Limited, who dragged us into the invasion of Iraq, 1 million dead there, who dragged us into every conflict that America proposed. They're now thinking maybe Scott Morrison has a chance. Maybe the coalition can scrape back into power despite all the incompetence, despite the performance on health, climate, aged care, the economy. Because war is good for struggling incumbent governments. And you can read Mark Sawyer's excellent coverage on the website of the history of khaki elections in Australia, stretching back many years. Governments which had no hope somehow scraping back into power when there was a war. Now, it's not our war. It's over in Ukraine, and Putin is the villain. They love a villain, a goodies versus baddies narrative. It's got all that. They're going to beat this war up for all it's worth. It has come as a terrific distraction for an embattled government in Australia. But of course, the minute the Americans ask Australia to be involved in a war, we say yes. And this is the issue. If Scott Morrison gets an invite from Joe Biden, he will be there with bells on. Now, that's not likely to happen just yet because there's a problem with the Murdoch press. Fox News has been barracking for Vladimir Putin. This is a legacy of the Trump days, of course. They don't want to lose all their mad Trumpists. So Putin is the good guy, according to Fox News. So in order to go to war, to get a license to go to war in America, they would have to get Fox News on side. Now, if that happens and Australia gets invited to go to war, the decision comes down alone to one man. Now, they're desperate to stay in power, these guys, and this war has come at just the right time. Some of you will have noticed, of course, because China had been the enemy of choice for this government, that now the press, their allies in the press, are conflating the China threat with Russia, basically saying that Russia and China are on a joint ticket to take over the world. That's the kind of rhetoric we're going to be seeing. Now, Russia and China, of course, aren't great mates. It's a relationship of neighbours. It's a relationship of convenience. But this will be the narrative in the Australian media so they can keep the spectre of an attack from China live in the public imagination. At the beginning of the week, we saw Scott Morrison in Tasmania. He went down to Tasmania to buy votes in a marginal seat in Lion, and he announced almost $1 billion in spending for Antarctica. He wasn't there to save the penguins, though. In questioning after the press conference when he announced the spending, it was all about China. It was about stopping China fishing and exploring in the region. It was as much about security as it was about stopping the melting of the Thwaites Glacier into the sea. In fact, if you look at the breakdown of the spending, a lot of it, hundreds of billions of dollars, is on military hardware, things like drones and helicopters. So it looks suspiciously like a bit of a military spend, another military spend from this government dressed up as something which might help the scientists and the environment. Now that he's got his war, he doesn't have to worry too much about that. This government has now got cover, just the cover they needed, a real enemy, a war to distract from the problems at home. They won't have to make up stories about unions and do union raids. They won't have to worry too much about things like the reality of inequality and the sagging economy in this country. When the wage growth figures came out this week for December, they went back. Real wages went backwards during the December quarter. The rebound from the pandemic did not happen. Like this video if you'd like to see war powers reform, so at least Parliament can vote on these incredibly critical decisions. We've just got out of Afghanistan. Let's not go and fight somebody else's war. So thanks for supporting us on Patreon. You can now also support us by buying merch. We've got a new Skomokio t-shirt, fantastic product. And you can also support another local manufacturer, Lonely Kids Club, in the process.